Sometimes it helps to have a typology by which you can sort of ramp up your thinking and think about, okay, so what could go wrong when you're developing a certain thing. So you might not have the resources to do this parallel evolutionary pathway, or you might not have the expertise to make it work, or whatever. So it might be helpful to think about, okay, so what would it look like if this went wrong? And there's actually, it's called the pre-mortem technique, popularized by Gary Klein, where you do this instead of watching a project fail and then going and do a post-mortem analysis. You think about, okay, so you go to your team and you post a question that, and you say that it's now 6 months from now or something, sometime relevant time scale. So it's now 6 months from now, and this project has gone horribly, horribly wrong. What has happened? And then people should think about this on their own, so they don't go directly onto and the same lines of thinking that the first person who speaks gives, but then people should be given the opportunity to then give their own input and their own views and their own creativity as to what might have gone wrong. But there's this in the bottom right, you can see the source. This is a study that looked at many of these different interventions, and it created this typology of failures. So one failure could be that, okay, so the product or the intervention of the program just fails to have an effect. Pretty straightforward. The next one is that it doesn't have the intended effect, but there's some positive side effect. And if you have a positive side effect, you better be prepared to capitalize on it, because it might be something very important that you didn't think about, but that arises from your interactions with the environment. The program might end up backfiring, so it produces the opposite effect to what you wanted to create. There might be a positive effect, but it could be that there is a negative side effect that actually offset this positive effect, and you end up in a plus or minus zero situation. You might also have a situation where you cannot, or it's too expensive or takes too much time to measure the actual thing that you're trying to do. So, for example, you might want to change people's physical activity behaviors, or screen time or something like this. But you don't have the time or the resources to actually follow up on the measurements, because it might be a process that takes very long to unfold. So you think, okay, so I'm fine with I'll just measure the attitudes for now. So you might end up with a change in the attitudes, but not the behaviors. And the behaviors is what you actually care about. Or you might be interested in health outcomes, and physical activity would be just one proxy or interim goal towards that better health, for example. Then you might notice that people are moving more, but they are not getting healthier. So that might prompt new questions for you. You might have a situation where you have a positive result, but it also triggers a negative later behavior. So at some point, in the beginning of the COVID pandemic, people were worrying a lot about people using masks and then compensating on their good behavior by taking more risk in other domains. And it didn't turn out to be false, but that's the one example of your intervention triggering something that ends up being net negative or zero. It might be that your environment could have an effect, but the environmental forces actually uh, uh, are not aligned. So you're not considering the environmental opportunities. So the people and the resources, so social opportunities and physical resources, and all of that, so that the change could actually uh, take place. And it might be that you have thought about it very well, but you just didn't get it right, and you didn't know in advance how things would unfold in this particular environment. And it also might be that the act of intervention in itself triggers some counteracting forces or a like an adverse reaction, so that people become very angry, or they feel manipulated, or they interpret your message as something that you really didn't think some maybe some minority might do that, whereas most people are fine with the intervention. But you, but they sometimes these small pockets of angry people can have a very large effects on the larger community you're trying to influence.